I recently listened to a podcast episode of the show called Expert on Expert with Dax Shepard, and obviously the guest was Jonathan Haidt, and a lot of his points hit home for me. He had some great valid points, and well, for those of you who don't know, he's an expert on morality and the science and psychology behind that. He talks a lot about how emotions shape morality more than reasoning. Let's talk about vulnerability. Should you be vulnerable? Well, it depends when, where, and with whom. It's something that you would choose to be in the state of mind of being vulnerable among the people you trust, or you learn to protect yourself from being vulnerable at certain scenarios. Now let's just suspend the right way of being vulnerable for a moment and think about how did we end up learning this sort of a skill to judge when to be vulnerable and when we shouldn't be vulnerable. I think it's through a combination of listening and not listening to our elders. Think about it. Cognitive resonance, right? You expose yourself to social, emotional, or even physical harm, even though you have the wisdom given to you by the people who has already been through that or has experienced something very similar, aka your mom. Like, you go after the woman that you know for sure is going to disrespect you, and you choose to climb this mountain that's going to challenge your physical capabilities. You choose to smoke cigarettes even though you know that it's slowly killing you and you could die. Well, we do all these kind of things. We choose to be vulnerable. I believe that resilience follows vulnerability. I just sounded like Will Smith. I'm just going to say it again. Resilience follows vulnerability. I mean, think about it. You have been a smoker all your life, but you end up living for 98 years. Great, good for you. But imagine someone who's a smoker and is facing some health risks in his 40s. What happens is he takes ownership and he comes up with a plan to overcome this addiction, and he builds resilience to quit smoking and live a better life. Furthermore, you will advise your next generation to not make the same mistakes that you did. You see how the cycle is coming around? Well, we need each other. We're social beings. That's how we learn and grow as a human being. Me personally, I think being vulnerable emotionally and socially is quite important, so that you can learn how to be or overcome pain, distress, or abandonment, and things like that. According to Dan Ariely, he has this term called Fudge Factor for dishonesty, and I think we need to have a fudge factor for being vulnerable. To what degree can you risk being vulnerable? Because you don't want to risk or expose yourself to an extent where it could have detrimental impact that you cannot overcome in your lifetime. We don't want that. So there needs to be this fudge factor, just enough for you to expose to certain scenarios where you could be potentially attacked. You could be challenged. It's not exactly attack, it's like challenging your belief system. I think the scale for this fudge factor should be the truth. Because like any other subjective thing on this planet, the truth shall set you free. Because it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You have to be able to express your ideas or your opinion, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, but you have to be able to do that, and then we could challenge that kind of opinion, idea, or expression on basis of reasoning and truth. I thought that's why safe spaces are important, because safe space is a place where you can talk about radical ideas or controversial topic without being judged. But according to Jonathan Haidt, the whole terminology of safe space is distorted. Thanks, Twitter. But in reality, the safe space is being used as a tool to protect you from getting offended before an idea or opinion is even expressed. Meaning people are trying to eliminate the fudge factor. Like, there should be certain degree where you should be able to explore your ideas with people potentially could get offended, but at the same time they will challenge your idea, which will make you to think and come up with reasoning that is more aligned with the truth and reality. So that's not going to happen because they're stopping you from even thinking about it. Furthermore, God forbid you do express your opinion or idea that is controversial, you get punished for saying things that people don't like. My question is, nobody likes the bitter truth. The bitter truth, like the name suggests, is bitter. Nobody wants to listen to that. Nobody wants to accept it. But it is the truth though. We have to talk about it. Am I wrong? Sometimes the bitter truth is sugarcoated. Imagine that someone is protecting you 24/7 from being vulnerable. There's absolutely no threat, trauma, or microaggression anywhere near you. On top of that, you have some sort of support system that will sympathize with you if anyone else has a reasonable bad opinion about your life choices. What happens? You start to resist the bitter truth about you and your association with reality. When you start to resist this bitter truth that can actually help you to grow and become a better person, delusion enters your mind because you're surrounded by people who are chanting, "It's not your fault." Well, newsflash, it doesn't matter. What is that you did that let someone attack you when you were being vulnerable? And think about if there's a way you can make them understand that same reason. If not, you have to expose yourself for more such kind of attack. And eventually you'll figure it out and you'll stick to what you believe in. You know why? Because you have built a resilience towards the bitter truth about yourself. You've modified your belief system by facing the challenges of you being judged. Jonathan Haidt has this amazing pointers about the same issue of how overprotecting can actually harm someone than doing any good. He actually talks about this one incident where a Latino female student writes to her dean, saying that she's feeling some sort of being ostracized in her own campus due to her race. And to that, the dean sympathizes with her and says, you know what, first recognizes that racism does exist by saying, I think the terminology she used is I understand that you don't fit in the mold of the campus culture or whatever. Don't quote on me. It was something around those lines. And that just triggered this Latino female because the dean was a white female woman, and it just triggered. She just hung on to this fact that she admits that racism exists and that she doesn't fit in the mold. But she dismissed the fact that she is sympathizing with her and wants to do something about it. Here's what I think that happened. There's a difference between sympathy and empathy. It's very similar, but not really. The lingo that she used suggests that she is sympathetic towards this Latino female, but the truth is they're sick and tired of taking pity from white people. They want more. That would be empathy. They want a support system. They want them to stand beside them and suggest some sort of solution or ideas to these people and say, oh, how about we do this, or how about we do that, which she did not do because A, we've been raised to be so averse towards such controversial topic or sensitive topic. She could have been genuinely lost or didn't know how to handle it. B, we've been raised to suppress any degree of confrontation. She could have asked this Latino girl to give her more details, anecdotes, or her own experiences, to share more, ask the right questions. Why did you feel that way? What made you feel that way? What could have done to not make you feel that way? To ask such questions is also that will make her more vulnerable, is just doesn't make sense. You cannot be sensitive to people who challenge your opinions. That's going to build your belief system. So you have to be open when people are trying to confront the things that you claim to be true. This Latino girl eventually protested, and a bunch of students wanted to fire this dean from her job. They got so mad that they wanted to get rid of her from the campus altogether. I understand that as a community, we need to make progress towards making this world a safer place from things like hate speech and speech that promotes violence. But I'm talking about the line that's being crossed to enter into this delusional mind. What happened to the intention of that person? Why is there no wiggle room for people to make mistakes anymore? What happened to the fudge factor? Shouldn't we come up with a better damage control rather than just shutting down people and just confining them in this closet from them never emerging from that closet ever again? Like, I don't know. It's a very frustrating topic for me. A lot of comedians are facing this problem right now where they can't even joke about the bitter truth that is actually happening in the society. Nobody wants to hear it anymore. I was personally offended by a lot of jokes made by Russell Peters, but I moved on with my life. I just don't focus on what I don't like. I just moved on with what I like. If people find humor in things that you don't, I think it's fair enough to say they should do their own thing. Well, it's a no-brainer when it comes to LGBTQ plus community where they get to do their own thing. If someone comes up and says, well, I find drag shows to be very sexually offensive, well, you're going to come up with a response to such claim by saying, well, then don't come to the show. It should be the same for any kind of art, entertainment, where people want to have controversial debate topics, the left and right having conversations without being judged would be amazing progress in politics, in policy making, or in general, learning and growing as, humanity. Well, I am a big supporter for trigger warnings. I mean, if they give you the warning and you proceed to go in to enjoy the show and then behave like quote-unquote Karen, that's just not fair. It should be unacceptable. And by definition, being Karen means having one-sided argument. One-sided argument. Again, a result of living in this delusional world where you're caught up with your own opinions and they've never been challenged. I just fear that the more we distort the truth in order to comfort ourselves, the more delusional we're gonna become. In the era of where we're trying to prepare ourselves for or to coexist with artificial intelligent machines in the future, I think it's imperative to be in touch with what's the truth, the reasoning, and the reality, this reality, more than ever in the history of humanity. And that's what worries me, and that's why I get frustrated on this cancel culture topics, and it's just, I'm really frustrated. If you can't tell. I'm excited to learn more about Jonathan Haidt because I haven't known him before listening to this podcast. I'm excited to read all of his books and hoping to find some great wisdom and knowledge. And if you've never heard of Jonathan Haidt, I would suggest you to go and listen to all of his TED Talks. I think it's pretty amazing. He has some great points, and I would really suggest you go and see those videos if any of this was interesting to you, that you find that interesting too. I'm just saying. Okay, so that was that. I think this is my first video on this level of energy. My previous videos have been more chill, but it's okay. All right, I will see you soon.